Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Welcome to the Happiness Show. This is Lionel Ketchian, and I'm here with George Ortega. And we're here to talk about happiness because happiness is, always has been, and always will be the point of it all. Today, I'm going to introduce you to George Ortega, who's going to teach you something about the APACHE Method.
All right, thanks, Lionel. Yeah, basically the show is going to be about the APACHE Method, and APACHE stands for, it's about the anecdotal positive adjectives, character, and happiness enhancement method. You know, I needed to come up with some kind of an acronym for it. So, all right, basically, the APACHE Method is kind of like a structured implementation of the third component of the Ortega Happiness Method, and this is about like choosing our thoughts. The idea here is like, you know, we're going through our days, our lives and all, and we've got a choice of what to think about. Most of us think that these thoughts come to us habitually, and what happens is, yeah, they come to us habitually in a sense because like we form these patterns of viewing the world, patterns of viewing ourselves and our lives, and these patterns manifest themselves as habit, and then we end up thinking these thoughts. And unfortunately, you know, since 70% here in the United States, we have like about a 70% happiness level. You know, unfortunately, we're not all that successful at kind of like creating positive thoughts and kind of like moving away from negative thoughts. So this method, this APACHE Method, is really about trying to cultivate the habit of thinking positive thoughts, not only for the purpose of enhancing one's happiness, but also for enhancing one's character. Okay, so basically the way it works is first, like it works to enhance one's mood. I mean, you know, on this show, I promote so many different kinds of ways to become happier, you know, because I research this stuff. I mean, there are so many ways out there that really work, but in my personal life, I use very few. I try to smile as much as possible. I basically try to just, you know, think good thoughts, but this, in terms of a method, this is pretty much the only one I use. I'll go to a public place like a coffee house or a food court of a mall and sit there and doing this and do this method, and it is really, really effective because it works both on the mood level of enhancing one's mood directly, immediately, once, you know, when one's using it, and then over time you find that more pleasant thoughts come more easily to one as one uses it. All right, I wanna first start out with kind of going over the science of it, because it is based on science. It's based on previous research. In 1968, a psychologist named Emmett Velton came out with a pretty much a classic paper in psychology, where he demonstrated that if subjects were given a list of statements to read, and these statements, for example, were, you know, toned to be angry or toned to be fearful or toned to be happy, whatever the flavor or the tenor of the thoughts that they were reading were, after about 10 minutes, these subjects began to experience that emotion. So if they were reading fearful statements, they would become more fearful. If they were reading angry statements, they would become more angry. And naturally, if they were experiencing happy statements, they would become happier. All right, then, now that was in 1968. Then in 1980, a New Zealand psychologist, Karen Hay, who actually published a paper with two other New Zealand psychologists, Richard Kamen and Shelley Leichter, Karen Hay created an experiment that used these affirmations, as they're known, you know, the Velton procedure, to see if they could enhance happiness over a period of time. So basically, what Karen Hay did was she had her subjects read a list of 18 positive statements, kind of like "I feel great, life is wonderful," all that stuff, which, it would seem, a lot of people think this is fluff, but it is like so effective. What happened with her experiment, after 2 weeks of her subjects doing this, 10 minutes a day, and then there was a bit of, I think there was a statement they read before going to sleep, but it was basically 10 minutes each morning. After 2 weeks, the subjects became about 25% happier. Just by doing this. I mean, so this is why I promote this method. The APACHE method is like so powerful. It's not only powerful, it's so easy to use and it's so pleasant to use, because like with other happiness methods, for example, being more grateful, being optimistic, these are things you've got to cultivate, you've got to think about. There's no structure to a lot of times to how to do this. There are things like, for example, with a gratitude journal, that you can kind of like sit down each day and think up things to be grateful for. But again, that can become, after like weeks and weeks of doing that, that can become difficult and maybe even somewhat unpleasant. All right, so anyway, so for more information though on Karen Hay's experiment, okay, this show is on the internet at thehappiness.show.com, so log on to there and check out episode number 5 that's titled The Happiness Increase Experiments Part 2. Okay, in that episode I go through this experiment here and the other experiments of the New Zealand psychologists. All right, so again, the APACHE method is like, it's a streamlined version or alternative to affirmations, because again, the idea is like with general affirmations, both Velton's and Karen Hay's, a subject had to read from a list, okay, in order to get this effect. This APACHE method prescribes that one come up with the affirmations extemporaneously, just like saying to oneself, I feel good, I feel wonderful, I feel creative, I feel industrious, I feel productive, I feel friendly, I feel loving, I feel loved, etc. Whatever you can think of. I mean, and basically that's that and smiling, because like whenever I do a method, I always prescribe smiling, because smiling is so powerful and so easy to just enhance whatever happiness method you're using. So so basically that's the essence of the method. And so what happens is, like, let's say you're sitting down. I like to do this in public, because like, I don't know if other people have the same experience, but I find that in public more emotions are evoked, or the emotions that are evoked are stronger. For example, I'm sitting down in a food court of a mall in town, and people are walking by. I'm looking at people, and I'm getting these emotions. All right, they're evoking thoughts and feelings, etc. And again, if the thoughts are positive, if I'm having positive thoughts during that time, I will be saying to myself, I feel good, I feel great. I'll be kind of like encouraging them and enhancing them, and just strengthening them. If they're bad, however, if like I find somebody walks by me and I'm, for whatever reason, maybe I think they're richer or better looking, or have some kind of a quality that I may not have as much of as this person, if I feel kind of like my self-worth being somehow like threatened in that way, I'll say to myself, I feel secure, I feel great, I feel confident, stuff like that. And that it just, whenever there's a negative emotion that comes into one's consciousness, one simply just, that's why this is called the antidotal. One simply just says the opposite of that emotion. Okay, so now one thing I've got to mention is that, like, generally I find that by simply saying these positive statements, these positive affirmations, I feel great, I feel wonderful, that works. All right, but what I do is I will sit there, either like I'll have some paper in my pocket and take it out, or I'll have a clipboard, and I'll just, as I'm thinking these thoughts up, as I'm thinking these affirmations, I'll say to myself, I'll write down, I feel great, I feel productive, I feel friendly, I feel popular, I feel whatever it is, that comes into mind. Okay, and the writing is really good, because the writing, it's kind of like a physical act that that just it strengthens the conditioning. Basically, what one is trying to do when one is using this method is to condition oneself to have these thoughts not only while one is engaged in the method, in order to enhance one's mood at that time, but to condition one's mind to at other times throughout the rest of our day, have these thoughts readily at hand. So whenever one's feeling not as good as one would like, one simply just says to oneself for 10 seconds, 20, 30 seconds, I feel great, I feel happy, I feel excellent, whatever it is. And one can also say, like, I'm concentrating on the I feel statements. One can also say, well, I love life, I love my job, I love my family, I love my friends, stuff like that. Whatever makes you feel good. Okay. So anyway, let's see. And the other really excellent part of this method is that basically it's not just a happiness enhancement method, because, like, something also that I want to mention is that on the website, thehappinessshow.com, there's an extensive list. There's got to be about 200-300 positive adjectives there that I've listed. I went through a thesaurus and got every positive adjective I could find there, put it on there. I went through several thesauruses, and basically a lot of these words, these positive adjectives that one is using in this method, aren't just for building happy moods, for building pleasant moods. They're also good for building character. For example, one could say to oneself, I feel reverent, I feel compassionate, I feel grateful, I feel responsible, I feel diligent, I feel whatever kind of character enhancing adjective one can think of. Okay, so and again with this list is very, very important in the sense that, we can like try to come up with these words on our own, just thinking about them, whatever words come to mind, just, say them to ourselves silently and then write them down. that does work, but with this list, if you go over it a few times, then words that you may not come to mind, that may not be in your normal everyday vocabulary, would also be available. And that's the importance of the list. You review it occasionally to keep in your mind these words that aren't as familiar as the ones that you ordinarily more frequently use. Okay. So let's see. Okay, the idea then again is that as you do this, two things happen. One, I use this as really the only method for enhancing my happiness because it's so effective and so pleasant. It's like, it works. It works, and you don't have to be alone while using this. You could be like, sometimes I'm with a friend and we're having a conversation. You know how some people doodle on the phone or doodle in class or something. So we're engaged in a conversation, and like I'm writing to myself. And a lot of times it's about what's actually going on. If I'm feeling really lucky to have this friend, I feel grateful. If I want to try to act better toward the friend, I feel considerate, I feel attentive, I feel sensitive. Whatever it is that relates to whatever situation we find ourselves in. So basically, it's something that we can use either on our own or with other people. And again, it's something that I use exclusively because it is so effective. Now, I have noticed though at times that, like, there is a certain limit. It's like, sometimes too much of a good thing can, reach a certain limit and not be pleasant. And I've experienced this. Sometimes, I'm like sitting in a coffee shop, writing this stuff down, and after a while it becomes a chore, okay? So then you've got to, it's kind of like there's an expression that says, like, the best time, the right time to leave a party is when you're still having fun. So when you're using this method, don't it should not be painful, all right? As soon as, like, you find that it's becoming a task, a chore, just to think these things up and say them and all, then that's the time to stop doing them. And try to stop before, it becomes anywhere near any degree of unpleasant. And the idea is, like, this is something I'm still working on. I've got to admit to you, I use this method, and, like, in a certain sense, I consider my happiness level at around 95. I tell myself that I'm like 100% happy because, like, you have to realize our minds are not logical. Okay, there's like this limbic system, this reptilian brain that we have that is responsible for so many negative, unpleasant emotions that we feel that make no sense, that have no basis in reality. All right, so our minds, like, apparently don't need logic to induce feelings, and I take advantage of that for the positive. Basically, it's the idea that we can whoa, all right, wait a minute, I lost my thought. Okay, basically, yeah, our minds are not, our minds are not logical, and we can use that in order to kind of like use this method. We can tell ourselves things that we may not believe, that may not be true in actuality. Okay, for example, and this is the beauty of this, like, let's say we're not feeling good. Let's say we're feeling needful, like we need something. There's something, we're not with our friends, we need to be with our friends. We're not succeeding at a certain task, we need to succeed or something. We're not feeling good about something. We can just tell ourselves that we are, I feel great, I feel wonderful, I feel happy, I feel content, I feel fulfilled, satisfied. And because our minds do not require logic to induce these emotions, our emotions will follow. Okay, and that's the beauty of this. That's why this is so simple. It just takes whatever state we're in and allows us to totally transform ourselves into a much more pleasant state simply by thinking these pleasant thoughts. Again, I try to promote a lot of different methods of becoming happier. We just did a show on happiness and focus. There's happiness in everything. My God, I mean, happiness relates to everything in life. So it's really connected with everything we do. But on a day-to-day basis, basically our happiness really is dependent on what we're thinking. So the purpose of this method is to cultivate the habit of these positive thoughts, of cultivate, if we've got these thoughts in our mind, in our vocabulary, and we're practicing them, over and over each day, we're gonna get better. Oh, wait a minute, I think I remember what I wanted to say before. For some reason, like I tell myself that I'm completely happy because our minds are not logical, okay? So even though I feel 95% happy or so, I'll tell myself I feel 100% happy because that feels better, all right? You don't have to be, in certain things in life, you got to be logical. You got to be truthful with yourself and others, but when it pertains to your individual happiness, your feelings, considering that you're getting so many like negative feelings that are totally illogical anyhow. I mean, so many of the negative feelings we have are illogical, considering that our mind is afflicting us not by our choice in that way anyhow, then I think it's fair and it's good to just use that same consideration, that same aspect of our mind, in a positive way, tell ourselves good things. But the reason I brought that up also was that basically, for some reason, this, even though I'm 95% happy and I tell myself I'm 100% happy, and it's kind of like some people have different hobbies that they have, interests, skills. Like a person will devote, let's say, hours to playing tennis, to getting better at playing tennis, or basketball, shooting hoops, just for hours at a time. I mean, we like to get better at things. So I just feel that, like, in the interest of this show, of happiness promotion, of my own well-being, that not to be satisfied with 95%. Not, even if I were 100%, genuinely, sincerely, I'd probably go for 110 if that's possible. But the ironic thing about this is that basically it's not. For some reason, I don't find myself using this technique as much as I could. And this, if whatever techniques, you got to realize we're about 70% happy in the United States. We're happy only about 54% of the time. And many researchers understand this. Many psychology students, more and more people who read these books are getting to understand this more and more. But we don't work on our happiness as much as we could. Okay, so to me that tells me that there's kind of like a function, and even I that I'm working with this for for months or actually for a couple of years or so, even I'm affected by this. So the idea, I'm hoping that with this kind of a method, it will kind of like dramatically change the kind of the biochemistry of the mind, the thought patterns, the thought habits, in a way that will encourage and induce even greater practice. There is a book that I read called Gateway to Happiness. It was the first happiness book I read by Rabbi Zelig Pliskin. We had him on our show recently, and basically I think he said in one of the chapters that a lot of times, like when we're the people who want to be the happiest are generally the happiest people. That when a person is not feeling all that good, then there's not motivation. You ask them like, oh no, this wasn't Pliskin's. This was Rabbi Noah Weinberg, who had this collection of because I used to be in Orthodox Judaism. 48 Ways of Wisdom or something. So he tells a story about, a sad person, you ask him, hey, let's go do something fun, right? And I was like, nah, it's all right, I don't feel like doing this. But for a happy person, if you ask a happy person, let's go do something fun, let's have more happiness, let's enjoy ourselves more, yes, that happiness acts as a springboard to greater happiness. So, again, I haven't been working with this method consistently enough or for a long enough time to be able to definitively say how effective it is in this. But the hope is that if one is diligent, if one devotes 10, 15 minutes a day to just sitting down and saying, I feel excellent, I feel productive, then not only will a person become happier and enhance one's character as the weeks and months go by, but then one may find oneself engaging in that practice more of each day. I mean, like the practice sessions, instead of just practicing 10 minutes a day, one may find when one's practicing 20 minutes a day or 3 times a day for 10 minutes each for 30 minutes. This happens in life, again with sports or playing an instrument like a piano. When somebody first starts, they might practice for an hour a day, but let's say they start giving concerts, they start getting really good, they start performing in other in parts of the world and stuff. They may practice 2-3 hours a day, because as we get better at things, a lot of times that just induces us to want to get even better and to be much more proficient. All right, I have run out of things to say about this Apache happiness method. I think it's awesome. You got to look. You got to look into the website for because like I've got it presented there in text form, and so I figured we needed a video presentation of it also. So now what I'm going to do is go into like a strategies and considerations segment of the show, where basically I'll just give advice on different ways that we can become happier and other ways other than the Apache method. Okay, one thing we've got to realize is that people are our main source of happiness. All right, people, it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, one could theoretically be like in some mountain in the Himalayas just meditating and blissing out, and be very, very happy. But for most of us in our society, in our culture, our greatest happiness, most of our happiness comes from other people. Okay, well, that, and again, we're not all that happy. We're 70% happy. We're only happy 54% of the time. At any given time, 1/4 of us are mildly depressed. I mean, that sucks. That's not fun. It's not good. So the idea is, like with people, a lot of times, there are people all around, especially in cities. We don't take advantage of these opportunities because interaction is risky, okay? If it wasn't so risky, then rather than most of us going home from our jobs each night and watching 3-4 hours of television, if interacting with other people wasn't so risky, we'd be out like in places, in coffee houses and bars, wherever we would be, in stores, just like, or even getting together with people during the week at their places and all. I mean, you know, if we're not so tired. Because really, I mean, it doesn't take that much more energy to be with people than to watch TV. So, but the idea here is that the reason we don't spend as much time with people as we could is because there's this kind of like a fear that we have. I mean, it may be subtle, you know, it may be subtle, but generally like, and it's kind of like a culturally conditioned fear. Like in cities at least, you don't go into a restaurant and see somebody there and say, hey, can I join you? You know, that just doesn't happen. And maybe in smaller towns it happens. Maybe in certain parts of the world it happens more so. But in a lot of cities it's just not part of our culture. So, but naturally, we can be kind of like mavericks. We don't have to like subscribe to the way things are, especially if this society is like so marginally happy as ours. So basically, the idea here is that we can cultivate more courage, cultivate the courage to reach out to people, to kind of like say hello, to initiate conversations, to be confident, and to have faith that as we seek to interact with people more and more, we'll get better at it. And as we get better at it, we're going to become happier and happier. Okay, so let's see. I've got time for one more consideration. A lot of times, you know, one of the strongest findings in a happiness researcher is that money does not, above the poverty line, money doesn't make us happier. Okay, I mean, below the poverty line is very important. That's why we should be much more compassionate toward the I think over 2 billion people on the planet that live on $2 a day. I mean, that's just like unconscionable, and we should really try to help them as much as we can. But generally in our society, many of us make much more money than we need, and making more money is not going to make us happier. So really, we should try to work only as much as we need to, and then just devote the rest of our time to try to enjoy our lives as much as possible, because that is really what life is all about. All right, well, that's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. In the future, we'll explore other topics designed to help us better enjoy life. This is George Ortega saying, be good, think well, feel very happy, and I hope you'll join us again next time here on The Happiness Show.
Happiness is powerful. It's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.